the paragraph after the Shema in this week's Parsha, Vaetchanan, Deuteronomy chapter 6, begins verse 10. V'haya ki yaviacha Hashem elokecha el haaretz, when God will bring you into the land, asher nishbah levatecha, which God promised to your ancestors, arim gedolot v'tovot asher lo vanita, you will find great and good cities which you did not build. The idea being that the Israelites will have the opportunity through defeating their enemies in the land of Israel to inherit those properties and items and riches and homes and houses which were built by those that preceded them. So now the next pasuk, the next verse, chapter 6, verse 11, details what some of those are. Uvatim meleim kol tuv asher lo mileta, houses filled with all good things which you yourselves did not fill them. Uvorot chatzuvim asher lo chatzavta, cisterns, hewn cisterns which you did not hew, did not cut yourselves. Kramim v'zeitim asher lo natata v'chalta v'zavata, and also vineyards and olives which you trees which you did not plant. You will eat from them and be satisfied. So there's this one phrase which is somewhat vague. Maleim kol tuv, that these houses will be filled with every good thing. So, what is this every good thing? What's in these houses? I would have assumed maybe a lot of ice cream. Well, I wouldn't be so wrong in that it is the midrash is going to pick up on it and assume it is about a delectable treat, but you'll be surprised what treat. This is a Gemara in Chulin Yud Zayin Amud Aleph 17a in Chulin. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Rav, Rabbi Yirmiyah the son of Abba said in the name of Rav, "My dichtiv ubatim meleim kol tuv." What does it mean when it says houses filled with all good things? Ze kotle de chazire. This is pig skins. Milamed shafilu dvarim tmeim hutru lahem, which teaches us that even things which were generally prohibited to these Israelites were at this moment permitted to them. Very wild idea. That at this time in Jewish history, the Israelites, when coming into the land of Israel, were actually allowed to eat certain things which they were not typically allowed to eat. And the example the Midrash uses is that of pig. And in fact, Rashi on the Gemara there says, there's a French word that's the translation of pig skins, and he says it's bacon, so very explicitly talking about pork and maybe even specifically bacon. And that's of course an extreme example, pork products being typically the most visceral, paradigmatic example of that which Jews can or do not eat. So the fact that the Midrash specifies that is meaningful and noteworthy. The Torah Temimah, who is our guide to these texts this year, notes that the Gemara understands this permission as being in one of two ways. It's either saying, Shnei Lashonos B'inyan Zeh, two possible ways of reading this. The Lashon Echad, Hutru HaIsurim, Rak Yisur Goyim Shimatzu Az. Perhaps it's saying that the Israelites this was a permission to eat those things which the non-Jews, the Gentile nations who were living in the land might have in their homes. Or perhaps another understanding is that even things that only Jews would have had, which were prohibited to Jews or Israelites, those also were permitted. And the Torah Temimah thinks it's the latter, basically saying anything and everything was permissible at this time. So the question then becomes why? Why would it be that there was a general permission to eat anything during this time of entering the land? You might have thought really quite the opposite. This is the first time the Israelites are coming back to the land of Israel after hundreds of years of Egyptian servitude, 40 years in the desert. They're finally back into the land, and for some reason there's this wild permission for them to eat everything. So why might that be? Says the Torah Temimah, Lashon shebachlal hutru yisurim lotasha, though according to the language that everything was allowed, Vafilu Isuri Israel, even those things which were specifically not allowed to Israelites, Humitam Deshat Milchama Hushat Sakana. This is because, remember, what is this passage in Deuteronomy talking about? When the Israelites go to the land and they're going to be at war. 7 years of war against the Canaanite nations and 7 further years of divvying up the land into the tribes. This is a dangerous time. V'hadavar nogeh lepikuach nefashot. And this can be ascribed to the broader principle of pikuach nefesh, namely doing things to save a life. What's the worry here? The Israelites are going to be at war, and they're not going to have necessarily what they need or want to eat. And therefore, the Torah is telling us that the Israelites at this period could eat anything they need to survive, and that goes to explain why the example of pork was used. Even something which we typically think is the most out-of-bounds food at this period could be eaten. And the Torah Temimah goes on to say this seems to be exactly how Maimonides in chapter 8, halacha 1, of the laws of kings and wars says. He says, "Chalutzei tzavak shenichnasu bigvul ha'ovdei kochavim." When soldiers would go into the boundaries, across the borders into enemy territory, of non-Jewish territory, v'yichbashum, and conquer them, v'yashvu mahum mutar lahem lechol nevelot u'trefot u'basar chazir. Then those Israelite soldiers could eat anything, whether it was just things that typically Israelites can't eat, like food not killed kosherly, and even like basar chazir, pork, okiyotze bo im yira'av, and anything like that if they were hungry, v'lo matzah ma lechol, and they couldn't find anything else to eat, ela machlot elu hasrim, except for these prohibited foods. So that's how the Torah Temimah likes that. He liked that answer. He likes the understanding of Maimonides, though he notes that Nachmanides doesn't like this answer, especially because the one major reason Nachmanides gives is it doesn't seem necessarily that we would need, if the reason is pikuach nefesh, saving a life, that wouldn't necessarily have to be stated additionally. We know that that's a general rule, but later commentaries, later achronim, justify the reading of Maimonides for some other general reasons. So a very interesting law, an insight into a very particular moment in Jewish biblical history, these 14 years following in the book of Joshua, when the Israelites come into the land and seemingly, according to this Gemara, found houses filled, Maleim kol tu, fill it with all good things. I had suggested ice cream, and the answer instead was bacon. But regardless, of fascinating moments, and always a pleasure learning with you. More next week.